You see that? That's a fingerprint. Somehow, a fingerprint actually got molded into the top of my Bonecrusher, and one day I will use this fingerprint to track down the Chinese factory worker who dared to deface my Bonecrusher! We are frighteningly close to yet another live-action Transformers movie coming out in theaters. And while I have absolutely no interest in the new toy line, I do want to take advantage of the hype for the new movie because I am petty and cheap and need the ad revenue like that. So we're going to talk about one of the original movie toys in Bonecrusher. This little bundle of hatred, one of the favorites of the original movie line for good reason, and we're going to go over some of them right now. So this big, heavy vehicle is called a Buffalo. It is designed to handle explosions. It's usually what Michael Bay's film crew rolls around in. But for this purpose, it is a desert minesweeper, which is pretty appropriately designed to be extremely heavy-duty for such a task. It's cast in a very nice tan plastic, giving it very much a desert quality, something that you would see deployed in the Middle East or so. And there's not a whole lot of extra plastic revealed here. There's a little bit of this dull olive color, and that's about it as far as different shades going on. Usually lets the other plastics and paints do the work, like a little bit of gray for the wheels, and I do like that the hubs have been painted, because it's 2007. They actually remembered to do that back then. And then a fake wheel up here that's completely painted. It actually is a pretty close match, so it's pretty nicely done. And again, it's just molded in that same gray plastic, so hey, at least I can't tell the paint from the tan color. That's good too. Either way, paint works, creates the good illusion. Weirdly like metallic blue going on here. There's a lot of glitter flake going on inside the paint, giving it a very, very metallic look for what should be windshields very heavily covered in dust. It's always been a little bit strange to me. It's also a very bright color for someone like Bonecrusher. You get a little deco thing on the side. You can see kind of a bulldog with that same little, I don't know, like big jaw, big teeth coming down, which is, of course, based on this piece, the main feature of the toy. So this is a rare vehicle with articulation, because this big minesweeper claw here can actually come up and down, and there's multiple hinges for multiple angles for all your minesweeping needs. Now, there's a few other things we can do with this. You see the hinge here, which likes to lock in at certain positions. And for other things we can do, we need to open them up because these two claws are pegged together. But that gives us a little bit of automorph. Well, I think Bonecrusher doesn't really have any automorph per se, but he does have this piece that gives you a little bit of action function in the claws. And the claws themselves can be rotated, rather, in order to give you kind of a gripping mechanic if you so choose. It's a nice bit of play value. There's a lot of play in this. Very, very nice. And we'll see a little bit more once we get to robot mode. Strangely enough, this is the first time I ever encountered problems with things like mushroom pegs, because that is what it's attached with, not a pin or anything, which does make it want to come off from time to time. Usually when I use this hinge, I have to be careful and I have to hold it in so as not to pop the entire arm off. Beyond that, very heavy molding all throughout. You can see studs and rivets and all different manner of mechanics going on, vents there in the front, big heavy grille, as well as all of these different ladders, as well as struts, trying to give you the impression of a very heavy, very large vehicle. And it definitely works. Look how big this thing is. That's a door. That's a full door. This thing is absolutely gigantic. Very, very cool vehicle. Very cool choice for one of the movie Decepticons. Not your typical military vehicle that you usually see, which is a good thing. So now to robot mode, and we will actually see just how much this guy changes, because, whoo boy, a lot going on. Alright, so first off, I need to unclip these sides. It's going to be one of those movie toys where in movie 1, we weren't quite sure where to put everything, And sometimes things get a little bit weird and you get a lot of vehicle bits hanging off of certain parts. I think Bonecrusher does one of the better jobs of masking it, though, as we will see. You have to unclip these, fold these down out of the way. With that, you can lift this up. That's pretty much where that's going to live for now. And then you need to unclip the entirety of the top of the vehicle, folding it outward like so. With that out of the way, these can fold forward. Those become the legs. Go ahead and spin those all the way around. With that done, make sure these are as flush as you can get them there in the groin before attaching that, what is essentially his groin, to what has become, well, two tires together kind of becomes his butt cheeks. But hey, I don't question it. That's just how Bonecrusher does things. The feet have a lot of little hinges and things in order to get them in their correct spot, so make sure you pay attention to that during transformation. They're going to be a little bit finicky, but we'll get the handle of them. Arms down like so. We'll go ahead and fold these hands out. And there with the head. Now for the back piece, we're going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a compressed backpack look for him. And then we'll do something I didn't do in the vehicle mode, which is open up the claws themselves to give them a little bit more of a ferocious appearance. It's one of those movie toys that had little touches of detail like that in order to accommodate a more interesting looking robot mode. And interesting is definitely a word to describe him in his robot mode. I've been accused in the past of criticizing toys just because they look different. I like Transformers that do things differently. They just have to do it the right way. Bonecrusher is definitely different in his shape, and we'll get into that here in a bit, but this one is definitely one that does it the right way. So, first off, as always, we're going to take a look at the head. He's got a weird little scrunched up face of hatred going on. I mean, hate was Bonecrusher's thing, at least as far as toy fiction and comics go. The movie didn't get a whole lot of chance to actually show off his characterization. He mostly just blew up buses on a freeway and spent most of his time, looking more like that than actually like an actual Decepticon. But hey, at least it's a unique face, big bright eyes, little mouth there done up in the gray. It works pretty well. Speaking of working well, they did a good job of hiding the secondary plastic color on this guy. Very, very little of that olive was actually showing through in the vehicle, and now we can see it in quite a few places. The entire lower body is done up in the stuff, as well as his arms and head, which gives him a nice mix of color. That said, he does end up a little bit kibbly. The stuff on his back isn't bad. It actually kind of works with his design, especially with those heavy shoulders, but it's all of those shells on his arms. Whew, boy, that's not pretty. That said, he does have this rather monstrous appearance to him. Very unusual feet with the 4 claws pointed down at the ground and huge arms that reach all the way to his ankles. It's a very different look, and honestly, kind of appropriately named, because he looks like he's ready to crush just about anything he gets his hands on. So, as is the thing with movie figures, very little of the vehicle's essence is carried over to the robot, which is not my preference. I can appreciate when a Transformer does a good job of disguising his robot mode parts, but I do like to see what he originally turned into, and a few remaining windshields on his arms and shoulders is not really going to cut that. That said, the detailing is nicely done. There's more of that olive paint in order to give it a little bit more detail in the chest, as well as some bronze paint showing through, which sets off pretty nicely against the tan. Everything on here is pretty much decoed very nicely, giving you this grim, kind of gritty color scheme that kind of works for the Desert Rover. And then you have very alien details going on in the arms. There's almost a musculature to some of this. It is a really interesting look. Speaking of interesting looks, that is a feature of this toy where the arms do fully extend even more, just about doubling their length. I want all the hugs. Someone please hug me. This is bizarre, but again, it kind of works for Bonecrusher. Bizarre is kind of his thing, at least as far as aesthetics go. And it's a neat little feature. Very simple to do, and honestly, it doesn't really detract from him in any way. It's the kind of gimmick that works into him rather than working against him and taking away his inherent features. So, that out of the way, we also have the arm that was in vehicle mode, which still works here. Now, once again, we have to deal with that hinge that doesn't like to be moved thanks to the mushroom peg. And we get kind of a scorpion-looking thing out of this. And we can still fiddle around with articulation here and get different kind of functions out of it. So you can grapple onto something, then really grapple onto something, and just have nothing left to do because he's out of limbs to beat them up with. But hey, you can do it! You can do it. Maybe he has a suplex that he can throw out. Never really got to see that in the movie because, well, frankly, he didn't stay ahead too long in the movie. Oh, hey, look, and there's that peg that's always given me trouble ever since I first owned this toy. Alright, so, with that out of the way, the articulation level. Clearly, we have plenty in those extra arms on his back, but as far as standard articulation, the head has a ball joint, which is at a weird slant, which gives you a little bit of unusual motion, but it's a full range. You can even go up and down if you want. The shoulders are very strange because they are also at a strange angle thanks to the transformation, but there is hinging that allows you to compensate for most of it. You can get a good range of motion. Some poses not quite possible, but it's workable. You also have a bicep rotation, which is good. Though those double hinges in his arms to extend them out, of course. Nothing at the waist, but ball-jointed hips that work pretty well for the most part. They are pretty tight on mine, so you have to kind of hold his pelvis area together to make sure nothing flies apart while you're trying to pose him in a correct position. Thigh swivel works very well. Knees, 90 degree. And then those feet. I'm pretty sure a gigantic robot standing on 8 little points would probably poke into the ground or do something or else that physics would not allow. But it does give him a unique and cool look, and there is an angled tilt, allowing you some additional posability and balance, as well as the front toe, moving forward and back. So you've got posing options on this guy. Now, the weird thing is, no proper elbows on him. He just has these inward ones, which is going to be the downside of the toy's articulation. Because no matter what, it's like even if you find a pose you like using that, you're still going to deal with the fact that he's got all of this junk hanging off of his arms, which still makes it look like his arms aren't really all that bent. And then there is balance. Those 8 little points might look neat, but without a proper flat foot, some of the poses, especially with those big heavy arms, not quite as balanced and not quite as workable as you would hope, which is another downside for the figure. But overall, I think this is one of the better outings for the first movie line. He's got a lot of unique appearances, a lot of cool features, especially that claw, especially in the vehicle mode. Really like it there. And yeah, a lot of neat things that give him a unique look without taking him too far out of the range of where the action figure in him should be. You're going to have to deal with weird balancing with him, and you're going to have to deal with those weird elbow joints. But other than that, I think this is definitely one of the good ones, and one of the ones I really wish they would give another shot at. I would not mind a Voyager Bonecrusher somewhere in the annals of the movie toy line.
Wow, 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 wow.